Hey there, viewers. The people who work closest to you always know more than they say, and when they finally speak, it usually means the end is near. Today, Diddy's private chef took the stand, and what he revealed in court might be the final crack in everything Diddy's tried to hold together. Let's get into it. Chapter 1. Burnt Garlic. Hidden Cameras. I ain't touched the plate they brought up an hour ago. Room service knocked twice, slid the tray in like I was some VIP, and left me here in this too-quiet hotel room with a half-warmed steak and garlic potatoes that don't smell right. Something about the garlic's off. Burnt. Bitter. Maybe it's me. Maybe it's my nerves, or maybe it's because the last time I smelled burnt garlic like this, I was scrubbing red sauce off the tiles of a marble kitchen that cost more than my mom's whole apartment building. The hotel TV's on mute, some news channel with a ticker rolling across the bottom about courtroom delays and sealed testimonies. My name ain't on there yet, but it will be, probably by tomorrow afternoon. My chest tightens just thinking about it. Testifying ain't the hard part, it's remembering that's killing me. They say time helps, right? That you forget the bad stuff and hold on to the good? That's a lie. What really happens is you remember the bad in little pieces, like a plate dropped on a kitchen floor, shards spread out under tables and in corners. I've been stepping on them pieces for years, bleeding slow. Tomorrow just makes it official. Tomorrow I show everyone the blood. I keep pacing, 5 steps to the window, 5 steps back. I can't sit down. When I do, my knee starts bouncing, then my fingers twitch, and next thing I know, I'm gripping the edge of the desk like it's gonna fly away. So, I walk. The air feels heavy in here. Not hot, but thick. Carpeted floors, blackout curtains, an vent that hums low like it's whispering to itself. I keep thinking someone's listening. Maybe it's paranoia. Maybe not. When I first got the offer, it was like a dream. I was working at this place in Miami, fusion joint, slick presentation, molecular gastronomy tricks that wowed the tourists but bored the hell out of me. I did my job, kept my head down, and one night this guy with 2 white teeth and a Cartier bracelet comes in, sits at the chef's counter, watches me plate a whole miso-glazed grouper with burnt orange peel. He asks if I've ever done private work. Some, mostly short gigs, I said. You ever want something real? He asked, leaning in like he was offering me a key to another world. I should have known then, should have asked more questions, but he said triple pay, full housing, travel, no social media, discretion required. Said I'd be feeding the elite. Said it'd be the kind of job that opens real doors. I was broke. My mom needed surgery. I didn't think twice. They flew me out the next morning. First class, no contracts, just an NDA on a screen I scrawled through without reading before I signed it with my finger. Just standard language, the driver told me with a smirk. That was my first hour in LA. The compound didn't look like much from the front. High hedges, white walls, security gates, but inside, it was another planet. Marble everything. Ceiling speakers played ambient jazz in some rooms, old school funk in others. I didn't even see him the first day. I got a kitchen tour, was shown the spice wall, the walk-in freezer the size of a garage, and told to make whatever he wants, whenever he wants it. My room was above the detached garage. Nice, simple, no locks on the inside though. That bugged me, still does. He didn't talk to me until the 3rd day. It was past midnight. I was half asleep, in boxers, brushing my teeth, when the intercom crackled. Louis, kitchen, now. I pulled my pants on, threw a hoodie over my tank top, and ran. That first dinner, it wasn't a dinner, not really. It was 6 men, all dressed like they'd just walked out of a yacht ad, sitting around the granite island like it was a throne room. Bottles of Cristal half empty, smoke thick in the air. Something smelled sweet, floral, but rotten underneath, like gardenias dying in a trash bag. It hit my nose hard, made me cough once. He didn't look at me, not once, just pointed to the fridge. You know what to do, he said. voice flat. I opened it. There were oysters, wagyu cuts, saffron strands, top-tier everything. I started plating something quick. Grilled ribeye slices, lemon aioli, microgreens. I was halfway through it when I heard it. Someone shouting from down the hall. A girl, could have been 20, could have been 16. I didn't see her, just heard the word disobedient shouted. Then glass breaking. Then laughter. A man, not Diddy, deep voice, drawling, like he found it funny. The other guys didn't blink, just kept sipping. One pulled out a vape, handed it to the guy next to him like a communion offering. Diddy finally stood, muttered something about needing to check on the entertainment, and walked off. I kept cooking. What else was I supposed to do? Say no? After they ate, I cleaned. Dishes, glasses, a broken plate someone stepped on barefoot and bled across the tiles. The blood mixed with garlic oil near the stove. I scrubbed it clean. That's when I saw it, on the top shelf, aimed at the cutting board. A camera. Small, square, black, like a GoPro but thinner, hidden behind a fake plant, pointed right where I'd been prepping. I froze. It wasn't just about security. This was recording me, them, everything. Later that night, I asked the house manager, some silent guy in a linen suit, if there were cameras in the kitchen. He smiled too wide and said, "Of course, for safety. You never know who might try to poison a man like him." I should have quit then. Should have packed up and walked. But where would I go? I'd signed something that said I couldn't talk. Couldn't leave for 90 days without clearance. Couldn't sue. Couldn't even tell my mom where I was working. So I stayed, like a coward, like a hostage. Back in this hotel room now, I finally sit down. Not because I want to, but because my legs won't stop shaking and I don't want to fall over. I lean over to the safe. The code is my mom's birthday. Old habit. Inside is a cloth bag. I pull it out slowly, like it might explode. Inside is a flash drive, black, labeled in silver Sharpie. March 17, backup kitchen, footage. My hands are sweaty holding it, the plastic feels slick. Haven't watched this one, not all the way through, just a few seconds, enough to know what's on it, enough to make me throw up in a hotel sink 2 years ago when I first made the copy. Burnt garlic. That's what I remember most about that night. Burnt garlic and the way the girl didn't scream when she hit the floor, just made a sound like air being sucked out of a room. They told me the footage was gone, that the system auto-erased every 7 days, but I knew the cameras had backup servers. I found them. I downloaded what I could when no one was watching, hid the drives in my room. Some I mailed to myself under fake names, some I buried in flour tins in the pantry. One I flushed, not this one. This one stayed with me. I set the drive on the desk. I don't plug it in. Not yet. Just stare. I think about tomorrow, about the courtroom, the way they'll look at me, like I'm lying, like I'm bitter, like I'm trying to bring down a king because I didn't get paid enough. But I'm not doing this for money. I'm doing this for that girl in the wine room, for P, for the others I never saw again. The burnt garlic still in the air. I breathe through my shirt sleeve and stare at the flash drive like it's radioactive, because it is. Chapter 2. The NDA Kitchen. There was a rhythm to that place, like a metronome ticking under the marble and glass. At first it all felt luxurious, too clean to be real, like I'd walked onto the set of a dream I wasn't supposed to see. The kitchen alone was the size of my whole childhood apartment, gleaming with brushed steel and imported white stone counters that had been wiped so many times the veins in the marble looked like scars. Everything had its place, every spice jar, every utensil, every imported bottle of black truffle oil from Italy, and the staff moved around it like they were afraid to make a single mistake. But it didn't feel like a restaurant kitchen, not really. It felt like a stage. and we were just performers trapped in someone else's twisted idea of hospitality. No one carried phones, not because they didn't want to, but because it wasn't allowed. Day one, they took mine, said it would be kept in a secure locker. I never saw that phone again. The head of house security, this tall dude with a gray beard and tattoos on his knuckles, gave me a cheap flip phone and said if I ever needed to reach someone I could use that, but only for emergencies. The number only dialed one line, a handler, and I was told never to give that number out, not even to family. When I asked how I'd talk to my mom, the guy said, "You'll have monitored weekends. Anything outside that is noise." I didn't know what the hell monitored weekends meant back then. I figured it out soon enough. The guests were strange, not the usual celebrities I thought I'd see when I heard the name attached to this job. They came in quiet, low-key, with baseball caps and black SUVs and no small talk. Nobody called them by name. Instead, we were given codes. Yellow 4 needs a light vegan plate. Blue 7 drinks only water from his own bottle. Black 9 wants oysters, no lemon, 10 minutes after check-in. Like military cod names. We were even given printed manifests in the kitchen, laminated in plastic with columns for allergies, drink preferences, and behavioral notes. Some had stars next to their name, some had triangles, one had a red skull. That one got whatever he wanted, no questions asked. Most of the kitchen staff didn't last long. They rotated out every few days like they were on a shift cycle no one explained to me. A pastry chef would be there Monday, gone by Wednesday. A sous chef would make it 2 weeks, then disappear mid-service. I stayed. They told me it was because Diddy liked the way I did lamb, said I had a trustworthy palate. I didn't know what that meant then, not really. I think now it meant I didn't flinch. I didn't ask questions. I cooked, and I kept my head down, and that's exactly what they wanted. But after a while you start noticing things. You can't help it. Like the way guests would show up looking dazed. Not drunk, not always, but slow, like their minds were walking 5 seconds behind their bodies. Women especially. They'd arrive in designer coats and heels, faces done up to the nines, but when they thought no one was looking, they'd stare off into space like they were trying to remember where they were. I saw one girl bite into a piece of toast and then spit it out like it burned her mouth, even though it was cold. Another walked straight into a closed door and didn't react when her nose started bleeding. The staff didn't talk about it, they just cleaned the blood and reset the room. Then there were the employees who weren't really staff, or maybe they were. I couldn't tell. They didn't cook, didn't clean, didn't talk. Girls, mostly. Sometimes men, dressed in silk robes or lace bodysuits, barefoot, wandering through the compound like shadows. They never said a word, never made eye contact. I tried once to say good morning to a girl with silver hair and a long scratch on her collarbone. She blinked at me like I was speaking a language she'd forgotten, and then walked away without a sound. That was the first time I felt the walls around me close in a little. There was a pantry near the back kitchen, always locked. They called it Zone 6 on the blueprint I once saw pinned to the staff bulletin board. I assumed it was dry storage or wine or maybe high-end ingredients they didn't want stolen. But every now and then, on what they called special prep days, the door would be open. I was never told to go inside, no one was. But the smell that came out when the door opened stuck with me. Sweet, chemical, sharp, like rotting fruit and perfume. I'd catch a glimpse sometimes, just shadows moving behind racks of boxes. A hand reaching for something, a girl's giggle, a grunt. Once, I saw a red high heel abandoned by the door, and when I looked again, it was gone. Then came the baby oil night. I was told it would be a concept dinner. That's what the manager called it. You'll be cooking live. Presentation matters. It's part of the show. I didn't get it, but I said okay. I'd done live plating before. Chefs do it for billionaires all the time. But this was different. They brought me to the marble island in the main lounge. It was cleared off, candles everywhere, low red lighting. Diddy was already there, reclined on a leather couch, laughing with two men I didn't recognize. There were women nearby, all half-dressed, some with masks on. I started prepping a tuna tartare plate, trying not to notice the girl who walked in next, naked except for a gold chain around her neck. She climbed onto the kitchen island like it was a massage table and lay flat on her back. Someone, I think it was one of the guests, poured baby oil down her stomach in thick, shiny streams. No one said anything. No one even blinked. Diddy looked at me and said, "Keep plating. This is dinner theater." I froze for maybe half a second, but my hands moved. Muscle memory. I spooned the tartare onto crackers, added garnish, drizzled balsamic pearls like I'd done 100 times. The girl didn't flinch. Her eyes were closed the whole time. As I cleaned up, I overheard Diddy mutter to someone nearby, "That one's not broken enough yet. Put her back on the B list." They both laughed like it was an inside joke. I didn't know what it meant, but it made the air feel colder. That night, I didn't sleep. My hands kept shaking. I stayed in my room, pacing like I'm doing now, heart racing even though nothing was happening, just adrenaline that wouldn't fade. I kept replaying the way she looked, still, oiled, like an object someone had forgotten to store away. Around 3 a.m., I heard footsteps outside my door, soft, careful. Then a slip of paper slid under the frame. I waited 5 minutes before grabbing it, half expecting it to be blank or some weird joke. But it wasn't. It said, "Don't drink anything you didn't make yourself. Be careful." The handwriting was tight, rushed. I didn't know who P was, not then, but I knew one thing in that moment. I wasn't crazy. Someone else saw what I saw, and someone else was scared too. Chapter 3. The Wine Room Girl. It was one of those nights where everything moved too quietly. The compound always had noise, muffled music, footfalls in the halls, the dull thud of bass through soundproofed walls. But that night was different. It was like the whole place was holding its breath. I was prepping a late platter in the main kitchen, laying out figs and cured meats, when the call came through the kitchen intercom. A man's voice, probably from upstairs, said, "Red 6 wants a deep red for the tasting. Vintage, wine room. Go yourself." I didn't usually pull bottles myself. Normally we had a rotating sommelier, well, more like a glorified runner with a wine app on his phone. But that night there was no one else around. I nodded, even though no one could see me, wiped my hands on a towel, and made my way to the south wing of the compound, where the wine room sat behind a steel door with a fingerprint scanner. I always hated the wine room. It was cold and smelled like wet stone. The temperature was kept just above freezing, and every surface inside was either metal or polished concrete. It was more bunker than cellar. The walls were lined with racks from floor to ceiling, full of bottles older than I was. The lighting was low, on purpose, I'd been told, to preserve the essence. All it did was make everything feel like a mausoleum. I keyed in the code and pressed my thumb against the scanner. The lock clicked open with a soft chime. The door was heavy, and the air inside was instantly colder than I remembered. I stepped in and let the door close behind me. I walked along the narrow aisle between racks, scanning the labels with a small flashlight clipped to my apron. I was looking for a 1996 Chateau Margaux, a favorite for Red 6, whoever the hell that was. I bent down to check the lower shelf, hand tracing the embossed labels, when I heard it. A soft shuffling, bare skin against concrete. I froze. The beam of my flashlight swept across the wall and landed on something out of place. A shape, curled up near the corner, between the final rack and the emergency breaker box. At first, I thought it was some kind of cloth, maybe a fallen coat or blanket. But then it moved. A girl. She was sitting on the floor, knees pulled to her chest, wearing nothing but a large white button-up shirt that swallowed her small frame. Her hair was a tangled mess, partially covering her face. She looked young, too young. Her legs were bruised, purple and yellow smears running along her thighs and calves. Her arms trembled when she tried to lift her head to look at me. I stepped closer, cautiously, whispering, "Are you okay?" She flinched, then shook her head slowly. "I'm not supposed to be here," she said, her voice hoarse, barely audible. "Please, help me." I felt like the air got sucked out of the room. My mouth went dry. My heart started pounding so loud I was afraid someone upstairs would hear it. I crouched down, about to ask her name, to ask what happened, but before I could say a word, a shadow passed behind me. The door creaked open again. A man stepped in, tall, dressed in all black, earpiece tucked into his left ear, face blank. One of the private security guys. I recognized him. Silent type, always stood behind the big gates during events. He didn't say anything, just walked straight over, lifted the girl to her feet like she weighed nothing, and walked her out of the room. She didn't fight. She didn't scream. She didn't even look back. I stood there for a moment, not sure if I'd actually seen what I just saw. Then I remembered the flashlight was still in my hand, and the Chateau Margaux was still missing from the tray. I found the bottle, put it on the cart, and rolled it back to the kitchen like I was in a dream. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. The next morning, I asked to speak to the compound manager, guy with slicked back hair and sunglasses he never took off indoors, always smelled like lavender and tobacco. He greeted me with that same plastic smile, like we were on a yacht instead of inside a compound that felt more like a trap. "I saw something," I told him, "in the wine room. A girl. She was hurt. She asked for help." He didn't blink, didn't shift, just tilted his head like I was telling him the weather. "Oh," he said smoothly. "That's one of the models. She fainted. Happens more often than you'd think. Blood sugar issues. Long flights." "Don't start imagining things, Luis. This is a professional environment." I opened my mouth to argue, to ask what kind of professional environment lets a girl collapse half-naked in a cellar full of $1,000 wine, but I stopped. Something in his eyes told me I was already pushing too far. He smiled wider, like he could read my mind. "We appreciate your discretion. You've been very valuable to us." I walked out of his office with my hands sweating and my jaw clenched. Later that day, I was informed my housing would change. My new room was smaller, deeper in the staff wing, and had no windows, just a bed, a dresser bolted to the floor, and a vent that hissed all night. My door locked from the outside. They said it was for security reasons. Then the cameras showed up. 2 in the kitchen, 1 above the spice rack, 1 near the prep sink. I saw the installer, a contractor with no name badge, drill into the wall while pretending not to notice me watching. I asked the head chef about it. He just shrugged and said, "They're auditing staff performance." I knew what it was. I was being watched. Every movement, every plate, every second. They wanted to know what I knew and what I might do with it. My assistant Rudy, a kid from El Salvador who'd been working with me for 4 months, was fired without warning, just didn't show up for the next shift. I asked around, no one answered. His locker was emptied by nightfall. I felt like the floor under me had started to tilt, like every direction I turned had eyes. Even the knives started to feel like they were judging me. That night, I didn't sleep. Again. I sat on the bed in my new windowless room, back against the wall, listening to the vent hiss, wondering how much time I had before I made the wrong move. I started planning. I remembered how the security system worked, where the feeds ran, where the signals split. I'd seen the tech guys use a hidden jack behind the walk-in freezer. It was small, disguised like an outlet, but it pulsed faintly when connected to the mainframe. I waited until 3 a.m. when the halls were quiet. I slipped into the kitchen, plugged a USB splitter into the jack, and started copying the previous week's footage. I didn't even look at what I was taking. Just dates and times, saved in chunks, labeled by hour. I backed it all up onto a stack of drives I'd stashed inside sealed bags of flour, tucked behind a third shelf in dry storage. I knew they wouldn't look there. No one touched the flour bags, except me. Every night for a week I did the same thing. Moved like a ghost. Paranoia became routine. I started whispering to myself, checking corners twice, watching the guards for changes in behavior. I knew it wasn't sustainable, but I had to know. I had to see it even if I couldn't stop it. Then the message came. It was on the burner phone. The cheap flip they gave me. Thing had been wiped clean after a scheduled update. No contacts, no history. I hadn't even touched it in days, but suddenly it buzzed. Just once, a single text, encrypted from a number not stored in any log. Do you have backups? Don't let them find them. They killed Max. I stared at it for 10 minutes, trying to breathe. Max. I hadn't thought of Max in months. He'd been a supplier, a meat guy who brought in Wagyu cuts and exotic stuff, venison, duck, even zebra once. He'd stopped showing up after a party last summer. They said he moved to Dubai. But now I wondered. I deleted the message, took the battery out of the phone and flushed the SIM card. And that was when I knew I wasn't just in over my head. I was trapped in something that didn't want witnesses. Chapter 3. The Wine Room Girl. It was one of those nights where everything moved too quietly. The compound always had noise. Muffled music, footfalls in the halls, the dull thud of bass through soundproofed walls. But that night was different. It was like the whole place was holding its breath. I was prepping a late platter in the main kitchen, laying out figs and cured meats, when the call came through the kitchen intercom. A man's voice, probably from upstairs, said, "Red 6 wants a deep red for the tasting. Vintage, wine room. Go yourself." I didn't usually pull bottles myself. Normally we had a rotating sommelier, well, more like a glorified runner with a wine app on his phone. But that night there was no one else around. I nodded, even though no one could see me, wiped my hands on a towel, and made my way to the south wing of the compound, where the wine room sat behind a steel door with a fingerprint scanner. I always hated the wine room. It was cold and smelled like wet stone. The temperature was kept just above freezing, and every surface inside was either metal or polished concrete. It was more bunker than cellar. The walls were lined with racks from floor to ceiling, full of bottles older than I was. The lighting was low, on purpose, I'd been told, to preserve the essence. All it did was make everything feel like a mausoleum. I keyed in the code and pressed my thumb against the scanner. The lock clicked open with a soft chime. The door was heavy, and the air inside was instantly colder than I remembered. I stepped in and let the door close behind me. I walked along the narrow aisle between racks, scanning the labels with a small flashlight clipped to my apron. I was looking for a 1996 Chateau Margaux, a favorite for Red 6, whoever the hell that was. I bent down to check the lower shelf, hand tracing the embossed labels, when I heard it. A soft shuffling, bare skin against concrete. I froze. The beam of my flashlight swept across the wall and landed on something out of place. A shape, curled up near the corner, between the final rack and the emergency breaker box. At first, I thought it was some kind of cloth, maybe a fallen coat or blanket. But then it moved. A girl. She was sitting on the floor, knees pulled to her chest, wearing nothing but a large white button-up shirt that swallowed her small frame. Her hair was a tangled mess, partially covering her face. She looked young, too young. Her legs were bruised, purple and yellow smears running along her thighs and calves. Her arms trembled when she tried to lift her head to look at me. I stepped closer, cautiously, whispering, "Are you okay?" She flinched, then shook her head slowly. "I'm not supposed to be here," she said, her voice hoarse, barely audible. "Please, help me." I felt like the air got sucked out of the room. My mouth went dry. My heart started pounding so loud I was afraid someone upstairs would hear it. I crouched down, about to ask her name, to ask what happened, but before I could say a word, a shadow passed behind me. The door creaked open again. A man stepped in, tall, dressed in all black, earpiece tucked into his left ear, face blank. One of the private security guys. I recognized him. Silent type, always stood behind the big gates during events. He didn't say anything, just walked straight over, lifted the girl to her feet like she weighed nothing, and walked her out of the room. She didn't fight. She didn't scream. She didn't even look back. I stood there for a moment, not sure if I'd actually seen what I just saw. Then I remembered the flashlight was still in my hand, and the Chateau Margaux was still missing from the tray. I found the bottle, put it on the cart, and rolled it back to the kitchen like I was in a dream. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. The next morning, I asked to speak to the compound manager, guy with slicked back hair and sunglasses he never took off indoors, always smelled like lavender and tobacco. He greeted me with that same plastic smile, like we were on a yacht instead of inside a compound that felt more like a trap. I saw something, I told him, in the wine room. A girl. She was hurt. She asked for help. He didn't blink, didn't shift, just tilted his head like I was telling him the weather. "Oh," he said smoothly. "That's one of the models. She fainted. Happens more often than you'd think. Blood sugar issues, long flights." "Don't start imagining things, Luis. This is a professional environment." I opened my mouth to argue, to ask what kind of professional environment lets a girl collapse half-naked in a cellar full of $1,000 wine, but I stopped. Something in his eyes told me I was already pushing too far. He smiled wider, like he could read my mind. "We appreciate your discretion. You've been very valuable to us." I walked out of his office with my hands sweating and my jaw clenched. Later that day, I was informed my housing would change. My new room was smaller, deeper in the staff wing, and had no windows, just a bed, a dresser bolted to the floor, and a vent that hissed all night. My door locked from the outside. They said it was for security reasons. Then the cameras showed up. 2 in the kitchen, 1 above the spice rack, 1 near the prep sink. I saw the installer, a contractor with no name badge, drill into the wall while pretending not to notice me watching. I asked the head chef about it. He just shrugged and said, "They're auditing staff performance." I knew what it was. I was being watched. Every movement, every plate, every second. They wanted to know what I knew and what I might do with it. My assistant Rudy, a kid from El Salvador who'd been working with me for 4 months, was fired without warning, just didn't show up for the next shift. I asked around, no one answered. His locker was emptied by nightfall. I felt like the floor under me had started to tilt, like every direction I turned had eyes. Even the knives started to feel like they were judging me. That night, I didn't sleep. Again. I sat on the bed in my new windowless room, back against the wall, listening to the vent hiss, wondering how much time I had before I made the wrong move. I started planning. I remembered how the security system worked, where the feeds ran, where the signals split. I'd seen the tech guys use a hidden jack behind the walk-in freezer. It was small, disguised like an outlet, but it pulsed faintly when connected to the mainframe. I waited until 3 a.m. when the halls were quiet. I slipped into the kitchen, plugged a USB splitter into the jack, and started copying the previous week's footage. I didn't even look at what I was taking. Just dates and times, saved in chunks, labeled by hour. I backed it all up onto a stack of drives I'd stashed inside sealed bags of flour, tucked behind a third shelf in dry storage. I knew they wouldn't look there. No one touched the flour bags, except me. Every night for a week I did the same thing. Moved like a ghost. Paranoia became routine. I started whispering to myself, checking corners twice, watching the guards for changes in behavior. I knew it wasn't sustainable, but I had to know. I had to see it even if I couldn't stop it. Then the message came. It was on the burner phone. The cheap flip they gave me. Thing had been wiped clean after a scheduled update. No contacts, no history. I hadn't even touched it in days, but suddenly it buzzed. Just once, a single text, encrypted from a number not stored in any log. Do you have backups? Don't let them find them. They killed Max. I stared at it for 10 minutes, trying to breathe. Max. I hadn't thought of Max in months. He'd been a supplier, a meat guy who brought in Wagyu cuts and exotic stuff, venison, duck, even zebra once. He'd stopped showing up after a party last summer. They said he moved to Dubai. But now I wondered. I deleted the message, took the battery out of the phone and flushed the SIM card. And that was when I knew I wasn't just in over my head. I was trapped in something that didn't want witnesses. Chapter 5. The Disappearance of P. Her name wasn't really P. None of us used real names. That was the first rule they never said out loud, but everyone obeyed like gospel. Just initials, or numbers, or titles. In the kitchen, I was Chef 3. The guards were Bravo, Delta, Echo. The women, half of them didn't get names at all. They were white lace, blue robe, second chair. But P, she made me remember what people felt like before all this. Real, whole, awake. She was the pastry chef, slim, sharp, always with a smudge of flour on her black sleeves, no matter how meticulous she was. She used to hum while she piped ganache, gospel songs, old ones. I asked her once if she went to church and she just smiled and said, "Not anymore, not since I came here." We didn't talk much at first. None of us did. You learn quickly in that place that conversation is currency. The more you say, the more someone can spend you. But after the night I got the note under my door, the one that warned me not to drink anything I didn't make myself, I started looking at her differently, watching for signs. She never drank the house coffee, always brought her own glass bottle of water in a sleeve she stitched herself, refused staff meals, even the pre-packaged ones. She cooked her own food in the back prep area, didn't trust anything that came sealed. Eventually we started talking, mostly late at night after deep cleans, when the compound quieted and the vents whispered to themselves. She told me she'd been there 2 years, had been brought in from a luxury cruise line gig, said she was recruited, same as me, promise of money, travel, prestige. Then the rules started changing. Locked doors, names stripped, cameras, one-way mirrors in the sleeping quarters. She said she kept her sanity by baking things no one ever ordered. Hidden trays of lemon shortbread, chocolate croissants wrapped like origami and left anonymously on staff beds. Her way of reminding us that something human still breathed inside this house of shadows. But what she said to me one night in particular stuck like a fishbone in the throat. "Diddy doesn't hire people," she whispered, slicing into a block of cold marzipan. "He collects them, like art, like antiques, like things he thinks only he understands." I asked her what she meant. She glanced at the security camera in the upper corner, dropped the marzipan knife, and wiped her hands before leaning in close. "There's a room under the east wing," she said, barely audible. "He calls it the vault. No one goes in except for him and the handler. I saw them carry a girl in once. Never saw her come back out. She had pink hair, real young." I laughed nervously, trying to wave it off, but she just looked at me, dead still. Then she showed me the exit. Back of the laundry bay, behind a wall of industrial dryer ducts, was a panel she said could be removed with a flathead. Behind it, a passage. Cramped, dusty, pitch black, led to the alley where waste bins were stored. Said she tested it once during a fire drill, said it worked. Said she never used it because if they caught her, she'd never be seen again. I didn't know then how prophetic that was. 2 weeks later, she was gone. Just didn't show up to prep, her station empty, apron hook bare. The staff manager told everyone P had taken a better opportunity in Europe. Paris said she'd left in the night, flown out on a private plane to join a celebrity pastry team. Everyone nodded like that made sense. I knew it didn't. That same day, while emptying trash from the compost bin outside the garden kitchen, I saw her ID badge sticking out of the bottom of a black liner. It was cracked across the front. The magnetic strip melted and warped like it had been held against a heating coil. I picked it up with tongs, slid it into my sock when no one was looking. Later, when I was alone in the walk-in, I stared at it for a long time. Her photo, faint, black and white, just her eyes barely smiling. Underneath the designation, kitchen, sub 12. I never told anyone I found it. That night the house changed. The lights dimmed early, the music overhead stopped entirely, and the compound went still like it was holding its breath again. More security guards arrived, faces I'd never seen before. Big men, ex-military probably. They moved like wolves, scanning every hallway. No smiles, no greetings, no pretense of normalcy. A party started just after 10 p.m., not one of the big ones. This was quieter, hand-selected guests. I counted maybe 10, all men, all masked. The smell of oud, burning resins, and sex hit me as soon as I walked past the second-floor balcony where the gathering was being staged. I wasn't supposed to be up there, but they needed last-minute plating from the chef staff and I volunteered. I wanted to see. That's when I saw her. At first I wasn't sure. Her makeup was different, heavy, face drawn, but then she turned slightly and I recognized the scar on her cheek. She was the girl from the missing persons flyer I'd seen on Reddit 3 months earlier. She'd gone viral for a week. A college sophomore from Milwaukee, disappeared during a music festival trip in LA. Her name was Rachel. I remembered her parents on a local news clip crying, saying they just wanted her home. And there she was, in a gold mask, barely dressed, holding a tray of something liquid I didn't recognize, moving like a puppet. I froze. The tray I was holding started to tremble. I backed away and returned to the kitchen, heart in my throat. That's when I made the decision I was going to leave. That night. I remembered P's passage. I knew the route. I knew the schedule. I could wait until the final security rotation near 2 a.m. when the guards took their break. I told myself it was time. They knew. They were already waiting. As soon as I stepped into the laundry corridor, someone grabbed me from behind, gloved hands, rough, my head slammed against a washing machine. I saw stars. Then I was dragged, stumbling, half limp, past the dryers into a dark hallway I didn't recognize. My vision blurred, my knees buckled. I don't remember the whole trip, but I remember where I ended up. The wine room. They locked me in. It was cold, quiet, like always. Except this time, I was the one sitting on the floor, shaking, bleeding from the lip, wondering if anyone would find me. I blacked out. When I woke up, I was lying on my side, pants undone, belt missing, something sticky on my lips, not blood, something oily, sweet. My mouth tasted like flowers and metal. I scrambled up and found a document folded under my body. It was a new contract. A set of revised rules, more restrictive, more legalese, more warnings. It already had my signature on it, forged in near-perfect imitation. I was no longer Chef 3. I was now support, whatever that meant. I stumbled back to my room, sick with confusion. My stomach churned, my mouth burned. That night I vomited 5 times. Not because I was drugged. Maybe I was, but because of that taste. That smell, whatever they'd put on my lips, whatever they'd done when I was unconscious. I never drank anything again in that house. Not coffee, not tea, not water from the tap. Nothing. Because I knew without a doubt what happened to P. And I knew for the first time that I might be next. Chapter 6. Cross-examined. They called him up like he was a ghost finally summoned from a forgotten war. I was sitting second row, press section, wedged between a chain-smoking columnist from Baltimore and a New York editor whose face I recognized but name I didn't. No cameras, no phones, no court sketches allowed, just a cold, heavy room, and the kind of silence that wraps around your lungs and dares you to breathe wrong. Luis Santiago walked into the courtroom with his shoulders pulled in tight, like he was expecting to be hit from all angles. He wasn't cuffed, wasn't under arrest, just testifying, but his face said otherwise. Pale, gaunt, sweat beading under his eyes even though the room was chilled. He looked like a man halfway through drowning, arms still paddling but mind already letting go. Judge Howard sat at the bench. Older woman, no nonsense. She'd already issued a limited suppression order on the proceedings. Said ongoing federal interest and sensitive material about 10 times since the morning started. That meant no live reporting, no leaks, and very little movement. Court officers patrolled like hawks. One reporter from an LA gossip blog had already been escorted out for trying to sneak a photo with her smart glasses. She wouldn't be the last. The defense side, DIDDY'S team, had all the polish and poison of a corporate cartel. Suits fitted too sharp, eyes dead behind expensive lenses, legal pads stacked like barriers in front of them. They hadn't said much, yet they were waiting, letting Santiago talk, letting him choke himself if he was going to. Luis took the stand like it was going to break beneath him. His lawyer, a tall, bony man with a graying beard and nervous hands, walked over, handed him a piece of paper. I could see the title on it from where I sat, just barely. Journal entry, May 2022. Luis unfolded it, stared at the page like it might collapse into flame. "I wrote this 2 years ago," he said, voice shaking but clear. "It was the only way I could hold onto what was real." The court reporter adjusted her keys. The judge nodded once. The room waited. He read, "I started working for Mr. Combs in 2019. I was recruited from Miami under the promise of full benefits, private housing, and creative freedom in the kitchen. At first it was normal, high profile, demanding, but nothing I couldn't handle. Then the rules changed. Phones were taken, NDAs enforced at levels I'd never seen. We weren't just chefs or staff, we were extensions of a system built on control and silence. Every night had a theme, a name, a menu. Sometimes it was food, often it wasn't. There were guest lists with codes instead of names, manifest charts that grouped people by availability and submission. I saw one chart with the word compliant written in red pen next to 5 women's faces. Some of those women I never saw again. There was baby oil, always, gallons of it delivered weekly, labeled as spa product or kitchen degreaser in the system. I watched a girl covered in it crawl across a kitchen counter while Mr. Combs and 3 men clapped like it was a talent show. She slipped once, fell, hit her head on a steel edge. I cleaned the blood with towels they told me to burn. I watched another girl convulse in the leather lounge chair, eyes rolled back, lips blue. I was told to keep serving dessert. I watched a man pour mushrooms into a drink that another woman was forced to take. She vomited in the corner and was dragged out. Her shoes were left behind. Size 6, red suede. Luis stopped. His eyes had glassed over, not from tears, but from somewhere deeper. A locked cellar kind of pain. His lawyer stepped forward again. "Luis, do you remember when you first began making backups?" Luis nodded slowly. "After P disappeared. And you recorded this footage, how?" "There was a blind spot in the dry storage. I ran an extension cable to a jack behind the freezer, saved data to thumb drives, hid them in flour bags." The judge leaned forward slightly. "Mr. Santiago, were you ever given permission to record these events?" Luis's mouth trembled. No. Were you ever asked to sign documentation that prohibited you from discussing what you witnessed? Yes, multiple documents, some forged while I was drugged, my signature forged once. I have proof. The courtroom air shifted. It was like someone had turned down the pressure. Even Diddy's team started rustling paper now. Let's talk about the menus, his lawyer continued. You said some were for people. Can you explain that? Louise looked like he might break in half. There were nights where I was given a list, a dish, a theme, and a set of photos. Women, sometimes men, labeled with dietary restrictions, drug tolerances, allergies, as if they were courses. The gallery stirred. The judge tapped her gavel once. Any further interruptions and this courtroom will be cleared. Luis's hands clenched. He looked like he wanted to disappear. I didn't choose the menus. I just cooked around them. Did you ever call the police? The prosecutor asked quietly. Luis laughed, one sharp, humorless sound. From where? With what phone? We didn't have phones. We didn't even have clocks in our rooms. I was under watch. The one time I tried to leave, I was locked in a wine cellar overnight and drugged. Were there others? He nodded. P tried. She vanished. My assistant Rudy asked too many questions. Fired, no warning. A supplier named Max, dead within weeks. They said heart attack. He was 30. Now it was the defense's turn. They moved in with a kind of legal swagger, like they'd been waiting for blood in the water. The lead attorney, no name given, just counsel, walked up and tilted his head like he was examining a museum relic. Mr. Santiago, you were paid well, were you not? Yes. You were housed in luxury accommodations? I had a room with no windows and locks on the outside. You had meals? I stopped eating them after I got sick. The lawyer paced. And you never attempted legal arbitration through your contract terms? Louis stared. I wasn't allowed to see my contract again. So all we have is your word, no verified records, no dates, no cross-confirmation. Louis looked at his own hands. You have what I lived. You have what I remember. You have what I risked my life to tell. You're a disgruntled employee, are you not? I'm a witness. A witness who didn't go to police, didn't seek medical attention, didn't keep logs. I kept video. The room tensed. The lawyer paused. Luis turned toward his own counsel. The older man nodded, reached into his case and pulled out a small black USB. He walked to the bailiff. The judge approved the presentation. Within minutes, a monitor rose from behind the bench. There was no sound, just grainy night vision footage. A girl, blonde, mid-20s, convulsing on a leather couch in a dimly lit lounge. Her limbs jerked violently, foam at her lips. Around her, 3 men danced in slow motion, laughing. One of them was Diddy, shirtless, sunglasses on, throwing handfuls of powder into the air like glitter. No one helped her. No one even looked. The footage lasted 2 minutes. Then the screen went black. Silence. No coughing, no whispering, no scribbling pens. Even the court reporter had stopped typing. The judge took a breath and whispered, "Recess? 30 minutes. Everyone out. Now." And just like that, the courtroom exploded into quiet chaos. Bailiffs moved like shadows. Reporters whispered without words. Diddy sat stone still, face unreadable. His lawyers huddled like rats sensing floodwater. And Luis Santiago stayed frozen on the stand, like the past had finally caught up to him, cracked open and poured out in front of the world. Chapter 7. The Smell of Thyme and Chlorine. I can't get the smell out of my head. Not the blood, not the baby oil, not even the smoke from that scorched bundle of napkins. No, it's thyme and chlorine that haunt me now, like somebody tried to disinfect something human, tried to cover up the decay with herbs and bleach. Even now, sitting here in this safe house, Miles and months away from that compound, I can still taste it when I breathe too deep. Like the air carries memory, like my lungs remember what my body still tries to forget. They call this place a safe house, but it's just another version of isolation. A bland room with neutral walls, too many locks, and windows that don't open. The lights hum when I try to sleep. The fridge smells like old plastic. I haven't turned the stove on once. I eat pre-packaged crap like I'm in survival mode. Maybe I am. The microwave beeps every night at 7:30, and I sit on the floor and peel back the lid like I'm unraveling a ritual. I used to plate lamb with saffron glaze and edible flowers. Now, I eat pasta primavera out of a black tray that sweats through its seal. I stopped cooking the day after I saw what I saw. That night still carved into the back of my brain like an engraving. I remember it all too clearly. Every step, every sound, the way my sweat mixed with dust and the stink of detergent as I snuck through the service hallway behind the laundry bay. I had been watching the cameras for 3 days, looking for the right moment, a change in guard rotations, a weak link in the chain. One of the new guards, tall guy with a limp, liked to take his smoke break earlier than scheduled. That was my opening. I timed it down to the second. I told no one, not even Rudy, not even P, and she was gone by then anyway. The hallway was darker than usual. Half the lights were off, like someone had cut the power to make the place feel emptier. I kept to the edge, hand brushing the cold concrete wall, heart trying to climb out of my throat. My keycard was clipped inside my waistband, smuggled out of the manager's office days earlier. It worked. Barely. The door to the laundry exit clicked open and I slipped through like smoke. The chlorine hit me first. Thick, sharp, like someone had poured a gallon of bleach into a small pool and stirred it with a bone. I gagged, covering my mouth with the inside of my shirt, squinting against the harsh floodlights that bathed the outdoor area in surgical white. The pool was cordoned off, not with caution tape, but with sheer white curtains hung from mobile frames, like something you'd see in a field hospital. Behind one curtain, 2 men in coveralls were hosing down the cement. The water ran pink at first, then red, then finally clear again. Another man wheeled out a cart. Something long and heavy wrapped in a blue tarp lay on top. The shape didn't move. I knew better than to speak. I crouched behind the dryer exhaust and watched through the steam as the men loaded the tarp onto the back of a truck. No license plates, just black panels and an engine that purred like it was ashamed to be alive. Someone was humming. I still don't know who. It was faint, almost playful, a woman's voice, out of tune. A lullaby? No. It was the gospel melody P used to hum when she made lemon cake. I didn't move until the truck was gone and the curtains were pulled down. I didn't breathe until the chlorine smell thinned and the water stopped pooling in the cracks between tiles. I stayed low, crawled back into the hallway, and vomited into a janitor's sink. After that, I never cooked again. Oh, I showed up. I tied my apron. I nodded when spoken to. I prepped meals with ingredients I didn't touch, using gloves I changed every 5 minutes, heating dishes in the microwave like some sick parody of the chef I used to be. I played dumb. I smiled. I acted like I was still loyal, still part of the machine, because I knew that machine would eat me if I flinched. I told them I needed medical leave, said I had gallbladder trouble, which wasn't a lie. My body had started breaking down. Sharp pains in my side, bile backing up in my throat, insomnia so bad I forgot entire days. They approved the leave without a word, no exit interview, no goodbyes. That should have told me everything. It wasn't a job, it was a contract with the devil, and the only way to break it was to lie like hell and hope he wasn't paying attention. I think about that night a lot now. I think about what was in that tarp. A girl, a guard, someone who asked too many questions. I don't know. Maybe I never will. I never saw a missing persons report that matched what I saw. Never found a name to attach to that weight being hauled off like garbage. But I saw it. and it saw me. I didn't see everything. I was never invited to the vaults, never saw the footage from the private bedrooms, never knew what happened behind the masks when the lights went out. But I saw enough to fill a lifetime with nightmares, enough to know that justice doesn't live in courtrooms, it hides in shadows, waiting for people like me to bleed it out, inch by inch. Even now, I wonder if my testimony will matter. They say the walls are closing in on him, that the feds are watching, that the files are stacking up. But I've seen what power does to truth. It distorts it, bends it, buries it under red tape and legal smoke until even the people screaming sound like liars. I wonder if the video will be enough, if the footage I handed over will survive the redaction blades, the countersuits, the media spin. I wonder if the judge believed me, if the jury, when they come, will believe me, if anyone will. And I wonder if they don't. What happens next? There are still 4 flash drives, hidden in places I'll never speak of. One in a guitar case at a friend's studio in Austin, another buried under a hollow brick in the stairwell of my cousin's barber shop. 2 more locked in a fireproof bag inside a bank deposit box under a dead man's name. If something happens to me, they'll be uploaded, one after another, full clips, raw, no edits. The things I saw, the people who screamed, the footage of that girl with the wine-stained dress sobbing into a sink while someone laughed behind her. I've thought about watching them again, just once, to remind myself it was all real, but I can't. I'm not strong enough, not yet. Maybe never. This morning a letter arrived, no return address, no postage stamp, just a cream envelope slipped under my door. Inside was a single sheet of paper, no greeting, no signature. It read, "P is alive, but she won't stay quiet forever." I read it 3 times. Then I sat down and stared at the wall until the sun moved across the floor and disappeared. If she's alive, if she really made it out, then maybe I can too. Maybe it isn't over. Maybe what I said mattered after all. Chapter 8. Diddy's end begins. They called him back to the stand like the story wasn't finished, like the room needed him again to breathe the rot into the open. Court had reconvened after 2 days of closed-door deliberations and legal jockeying. We were all there again, pressed with no pens, staff with no phones, eyes darting around the room like we were watching a live detonation. The bailiff announced Luis Santiago's name, and the silence that followed was dense and expectant, like the world was holding in its final gasp before deciding what came next. Luis looked thinner than he had 2 days earlier, if that was even possible. His face was more hollow, the bruises under his eyes more purple than gray now. His clothes hung off him like they were borrowed, but he walked with the kind of stillness that isn't weakness. It's survival. It's the calm that follows a man who's lost too much to flinch anymore. He sat, adjusted the mic, and looked to the judge, who gave him a nod barely perceptible. The room remained hushed, though every single person in that gallery had felt the tremor from his last appearance. It wasn't just the video. It was the way he said things that couldn't be rehearsed. It was the way his voice shook when he mentioned names no one else remembered, the kind of details that stick because they were lived, not fabricated. Now it wasn't just his story anymore. They brought in the others. First was a former assistant, a man who worked logistics for travel and entertainment. He confirmed the guest lists Luis spoke about, code names, a rotating manifest, NDA enforcement. He admitted to arranging pickups for girls under fake aliases, said he didn't ask questions, said he was told not to. Then came a masseuse. She looked broken before she said a word. Soft-spoken, early 30s, claimed she once walked into a back room and found a girl passed out, naked, covered in bruises and oil. Said she was told to fix her up, not ask why. She quit the next day. Never went public, said she didn't think anyone would believe her. Not until now. Then the driver. He brought the receipts, logs, phone screenshots, unofficial drop-off points near clinics and private hangars. Girls, too, out of it to stand, some taken from one house to another, never the same ones twice. He said some would cry in the back seat, ask if their parents were looking for them. Said he was told not to talk, just to drive. Then, a girl. We didn't know her name, just a code. Witness, B17. She was the one from the 2016 incident, a missing persons case that never went to trial. Said she was 17 when she first entered the compound. Said she was promised a modeling contract and a shot at a music video. Said she was drugged her second night. Said she woke up naked in a room with speakers blaring ambient noise and 2 cameras on tripods. She never said Diddy's name aloud. She didn't have to. Piece by piece, they built a collage of rot. In the back of the room, you could see Diddy shrinking. He wasn't the man from the billboards or the award shows, not anymore. He looked like a husk in an expensive suit, slouched slightly, eyes sunken, skin the color of bad tea. His lawyers scribbled, whispered, fidgeted, filed motions that were denied before they finished speaking. And despite the seal on the courtroom, the leaks started. Whispers of tapes, baby oil shipments with no declared buyer. The phrase "blist" started showing up in forums. Wild King nights became urban legend within 24 hours. Old photos were recirculated. Women in robes, staff with blurred faces, receipts for event services tied to ghost companies. The machine had cracked, the gears were slipping. And the judge? She didn't smile once, didn't flinch. She let the testimonies stack until the room couldn't breathe under them anymore. Then she leaned forward and said there was now federal crossover interest, that certain elements would be transferred to a sealed grand jury, that some testimonies would be revisited under new jurisdictions. You could feel the walls tightening, not just around Diddy, but around the whole ecosystem that kept him untouchable. Luis was dismissed. His lawyer placed a hand on his shoulder, but he didn't react. He stood, slow, deliberate. His legs looked weak, but he didn't stumble. As he stepped down from the stand, he reached into his pocket and squeezed something in his fist. A coin. I caught the glint of it when he turned slightly. Brass, or maybe bronze, small enough to be hidden in a fist. It had a sun engraved on one side, no markings on the other. I remembered him saying once in an earlier testimony that P had given it to him, said it was for luck, said she carried a matching one. He never figured out what the sun meant. Maybe now he didn't care. He walked toward the hallway slowly. As he passed through the double doors, he paused. Standing near the far wall, in the shadow of the exit sign, was a man in a suit, bald, thick-necked, sunglasses still on even inside. He didn't speak. He didn't move. Luis looked at him. The man nodded once. J-Bud. They didn't exchange a word. Just a nod. The kind of nod that means something passed between them once. Something unspoken and permanent. Luis left the courtroom with his head still held upright. The door shut behind him with a final, dry click. Court adjourned, just like that. But nobody moved. Not until the clerk walked to the judge's chamber door carrying a sealed manila envelope. It wasn't listed in evidence, wasn't labeled, just handed over quietly. The judge accepted it without a word. Later, it would be confirmed, though not officially, that the envelope contained 36 photographs, high resolution, night vision stills, from the wine room. The girl Luis had found that night, sitting bruised and barefoot on the cold tile, whispering, "Please help me. I'm not supposed to be here." Each photo had a timestamp. Each timestamp matched the night of fire and foam. The same night the ambulance was called and rerouted. The same night the cameras glitched. The same night a girl collapsed in the pool yard and was loaded onto a truck. The same night Luis tried to run. No one knows how the photos made it into that envelope. No one knows who placed it. But rumors say it was found taped beneath a toilet tank lid in the men's guardhouse restroom. behind a cracked tile where a USB drive used to be. We may never know who turned it in, but we know who it was meant for, and we know what it means. Diddy's end isn't here yet, but it's begun.